You'll find more of that information in that book. I'm going to hopefully have a conversation with you guys after I tell you a little bit about myself and the traumas I went through and the things that helped me. I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to give it to you through a story. You see, I came to the United States when I was 1 year old in 1980. My mom left Mexico running away from my father, who was an alcoholic and frequently beat her. Unfortunately, about a year after, he found us and he came to live with us in the States. And the beatings continued. Often my mom would wear dark sunglasses inside the house. And she would wear those sunglasses, of course, to hide the black eyes that were behind them. And as odd as it may sound, or maybe not, this seemed normal to me because nobody spoke about it. There were about 30 people in that household. It was a house that we used to call Ellis Island for our family members because every time a family member came, they arrived at that house in Westminster in Orange County. And even with so many people in this house, nobody spoke about those beatings. Nobody spoke about that domestic violence that was going on. And there were other men within that house who would also beat their wives. And we as kids, we observed this and we experienced it and we saw it. And we knew that it was something terrifying, but we thought it was normal. But worst of all was the sexual abuse that my mom experienced at the hands of my father. There were nights when, against her will, he would impose himself on her. And I would go and hide under the bed. But nonetheless, I would hear the muffled cries of my mother and her telling him to stop, and he wouldn't. And I would just hide and curl up and cover my ears and try to prevent the sound from entering them, but it was impossible. And again, nobody spoke about this. After it happened, the next morning, everybody went about their business. My mom said nothing. She was quiet, stoic, walked around like a zombie, got ready for work and left. My father, cheery and upbeat, pretended like he did nothing wrong. And me as a child, again, it was terrifying, but it was normal because it happened often. And nobody ever came to me and said, look, what is happening to your mother is not correct. It shouldn't be happening. So those were the first traumas that I experienced, even though at that time I didn't know they were traumas. And later on when I started school, the teachers put me in special ed because I wouldn't talk. And because I wouldn't do my work. And they thought I had trouble learning. Nothing having to do with me not knowing how to speak English because everybody in my household spoke Spanish. So when they put me in special ed, I grew resentful because with special ed came punishment. I would be kept after school for detention, and at recess, I would be placed on a little box. I swear, I shit you not. A little square about the size of the seat right here, and they would tell me to sit there with my legs, as they would call it back then, Indian style, right? Now they say crisscross applesauce, something like that. All right, whatever. And next to me would be other kids that looked like me, all the brown kids who only spoke Spanish, while all the other kids who spoke English and didn't look like me, because back then in the city of Westminster was mostly white, in particular in the area where we lived. But that was normal to us, because we expected to be there. We expected to be punished. But nobody ever asked, hey, why aren't you doing your homework? Or nobody ever came to me and spoke to me in my language to try to find some understanding. So thus my relationship with teachers from then on was a negative one that I could never mend after that. because I would look at them and I saw enemies in them. People who I couldn't trust, people who didn't care about me. And therefore, I didn't care for them. And I didn't care for anything that they were trying to teach me. So that was my elementary experience. That was my junior high experience. And eventually, my only outlet for all of these things that I learned to hold inside, because I had no avenue of letting them out, no one to talk to them about. At 13, I joined a gang, because there I could find some understanding. There I could find an outlet for all the aggression and energy that I had, for all of those things that I held inside. And as you can imagine, things only got worse. Because at 13 is also the age when I first went to juvenile hall. And everything became a punishment after that. Everything I did was because I was crazy. Está loco. Ese niño está loco. There's something wrong with him. It was never, wow, what could have happened to him to make him act out this way? What is it that's missing? Or what is it that has wounded him to the point that this is the only way he knows how to act in society? And what I mean by that is that I began to hurt other people. I began to rob people, beat other rival gang members, shoot at other rival gang members. And my life just spiraled out of control. So much so that by the ninth grade, age 14, I dropped out of high school completely and dedicated my life to just being a full-time gang member. Wouldn't come home, wouldn't listen. And it was all about fighting with authority. And at 17 years old, I was shot in the back during a store robbery. The store clerk shot me as I was running away. 17 years old. I'm an English professor. And a lot of my kids, well, I call them kids, but they're adults technically. But you know, they come after high school, so they're 18, but I see them when they're 18 and I can't fathom any of them doing the things that I did. Although, you know, I teach in East LA, so a lot of them have experienced these things. They come from communities where these things are prevalent. But nonetheless, I look at them sometimes, or sometimes when I visit juvenile halls, and I look at the kids there, and they're 17, they're 16, they're 15, and they look like children to me. I just look into their little faces, and it's heartbreaking. It's like, God damn, you're a kid, you're a child. It's like, what could have possibly happened to you that drove you to do the things that you did that got you here? And nobody ever asked that. That's why those kids end up there. And they look at me, and I look at them, and it's like looking into a mirror, looking into a portal into my past. And then I think about the things that I did in my past, and it's mind-blowing, because as an adult, like, you would never do those things. But at 17, I was shot in the back. And I remember when the doctor came, and it was probably like 3 days after, I'd been shot, after the moment that I'd been shot, because I was I was in an induced coma. So when I came out of that coma a few days later, I remember the doctor being there and him telling me directly to my face, as doctors do, I'm sorry to inform you, but you're paralyzed from the waist down. You'll never walk again. It's permanent. And next to him is my mother, crying, weeping uncontrollably. And I'm just looking at the doctor, looking at my mother, without a tear in my eye. I don't say anything. What can I say? I never spoke about any of my problems before. I'm gonna start now because I was shot in the back and left paralyzed. That shit was normal to me too. You know why it was normal to me? Because I'd seen other gang members in wheelchairs. So I accepted it in that moment. Hell, in the moment that I was shot and I landed on the floor and I couldn't feel my legs and I couldn't get up and run, I knew that I was paralyzed. In that instant, my homeboys came up to me and they said, come on, we'll get you in the van. We'll take you to the hospital. And I was smart enough in that moment to say, no, man, leave me here. Because if you move me, you might cause more damage. I was smart enough to know that. But why? Because that was normal. So when the doctor said that, I just stared at him. I said, okay, where do I go from here? Nobody talked to me about it. I had no therapy. I kept that shit in. I never cried about being in a wheelchair. Now, do you know what it's like to be in a wheelchair? To not feel your legs? To not be able to walk, to not be able to run, jump, ride a bicycle? To not be able to dance with a girl, even though I was never really a dancer. But you don't miss things until you really can't do them sometimes. But I felt nothing. I felt numb. And I didn't care really. Because not even a year after I'd been shot in the back, I shot a rival gang member. I didn't kill him, but I shot him from my wheelchair because I would carry a gun with me everywhere I went. And I shot this rival gang member, and I got charged with attempted murder, and I was taken to the county jail. My mom bailed me out. And I fought the case for about 2 years, 3 years. And again, I kept all of this to myself. When my mom now would come and ask me questions and want to know why I did the things I did, I didn't know how to answer her. I didn't know what to tell her. What do? I didn't even know that these things that happened to me early on were some of the causes why I later did the things that I did. I didn't know anything had to do with my father beating her when I was small, or me witnessing her being raped by him when I was small, or that even my alcoholism extended from him being an alcoholic and a drug addict. I just thought those were my own problems. It was me. Because that's what they tell you. It's you. That's what the system tells you all the time. It's you, kid. You got problems. Now you need to fix yourself, or you're going to end up in prison for life. All right, now how do I do that? I don't know. Just go in that cell, shut up, and don't cause a ruckus, because things will get worse. All right, then, that's what we'll do. Fortunately, my mother is a heavy reader. She loves to read. And to her, the answer to all my problems was always read. Read a book. What the fuck am I gonna read a book for? Now look, you're just surrounded by books. Read a book and go to school. And she took me to about 4 different colleges. I went to Palomar College in San Diego. I took a reading class. I got like a C. And then we came back to Orange County. And then I took a history class at Santana College. I dropped out. I didn't finish the class. I took at Golden West College before I was even shot. The last time I got out of juvenile hall, my mom enrolled me there, and I got in a fight there and I stabbed the guy. So they kicked me out for 10 years. So that was those colleges. And finally, after I shot this rival gang member and I was out on bail, my mom took me to Cypress College, which is also in Orange County. And she enrolled me in an English class. And in this English class, on my first day there, you know, I was wearing my Ben Davis cut-off pants, nicely creased with my white socks pulled all the way up, a nice crispy white shirt, fresh bald head, nice and lathered with lotion. I was fresh. And this class was full of nothing but Asian kids and white kids. And so I went all the way to the back, tried to be invisible, but I stood out like a sore thumb. Of course I did. And the teacher, she said, all right, take out a piece of paper and a pen, and here's your assignment for today. She said, write about a life-changing experience. I said, life-changing experience? Let me see. I can do that. So I started writing with all the other kids. Hell, I finished before all of them. I got my shit. I went up to her. I said, boom, I'm out. I left my paper there. Thought nothing of it. Like, whatever. I came back the next class day, and she passed out all of the assignments from the previous class. And I looked at my paper, and it was full of all these red marks. And I didn't even read them. And I just folded it, put it in my pocket. And then she dismissed class. And I was the last one to follow out. And as I was going to cross the threshold from the door, she said, Obed. And I turned around, and she said, come here, can I talk to you for a minute? And right away I thought, oh man, here we go. This lady's going to tell me that I don't belong here, that my writing sucks, and college ain't for me. But again, I was ready for it. Why? Because it was normal. I wasn't a good student. I wasn't meant to be there. I was only there because my mom wanted me to be there. I was going to prison. I was fighting an attempted murder case, and the DA wanted to give me life in prison. I was only there because I wanted to please my mom. So I go back and I roll up to her desk with my head down. And she says, do you have your paper? And I go, what paper? She goes, the story you wrote. I said, yeah. She goes, can you take it out, please? All right. So I cut it out of my pocket, and I unfolded it, and I put it on her desk. I tried to flatten it out. And I go, so what's up? And she says, where'd you learn how to write? I said, learn how to write? She goes, yeah, where'd you learn how to write? I go, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, that story you wrote, it's really good. Where did you go to high school? And I said, high school? And I'm looking at the paper, and it has all these red marks, and I'm thinking, lady, are you sure you're not mistaking me for somebody else? Or are you fucking with me? Because this is going to be cruel, and it's going to break my heart when you find out I'm the wrong person. And she goes, yeah, you're Obed, right? That's you. That's your name. I go, yeah. And then she told me about the story. And I go, yeah, that's my story. She goes, yeah, I'm talking to the right person. Where'd you go to high school? And so I told her, well, I never went to high school. Really, I dropped out in the 9th grade. I only did like 2 weeks probably. And it was a wrap. And she goes, really? And I go, yeah. And then she took an interest. And she started asking me more questions. Like, where'd you grow up? Then I told her. Well, I grew up in Westminster, and it turns out she was married to a Vietnamese man, so we had something in common. Westminster, Vietnamese community, fun. So we had something in common. And then she started asking me more questions. And before I knew it, like a whole hour had passed by. And then I realized that this lady was taking an interest in me. Not only in me, but in my writing. Like she was recognizing me for something I did well, something I didn't even know I did well. Because when I told her that I had dropped out of high school, she goes, well, where'd you learn how to write? And I said, well, I don't know, miss, but the only writing I've ever done was writing letters to jail or writing letters from jail. And then she told me, well, you have a natural gift. And I was like, yeah, is that right? That made me feel good. Because remember, no teacher had ever told me that I did anything well. Everything was punishment. And here is a person in a place of authority. You know, because when you're a kid, you admire teachers. You look up to them. You see them as gods. You're like, you're a teacher. You're a peer. So when they punish you, that hurts. That ruins you. It stains you. So now, here's this person, a white lady at that, telling me that I write well. I'm like, yeah, you know what, I do write well. And so, but nonetheless, I'm looking at the marks on my paper. I'm like, well, what's up with those marks though? And she said, well, you know, grammar, that's all technical stuff. Don't worry about that. We'll worry about that later. I said, all right. I didn't even know what grammar meant. I'm like, whatever you say, lady, right? And so what happened after that was every day after class, she would sit with me for hours at a time. 1 hour, 2 hours even. And we would just talk in the classroom. She would sit on her chair or she would sit at her desk and we would just talk back and forth. Every day, there was not a class, a moment after class that she wouldn't give me her time. And you know, when I think about it now, what she became really was my fucking therapist. Right? But more important than that, she became my friend. Right? She became somebody who cared. She became somebody who took interest in my life, who asked me why I had done the things that I had done, who asked me what were some of the things that had happened to me, what were some of the experiences that I had gone through early on in my life. She didn't judge me. She didn't see a gang member in a wheelchair who was now going to prison because he shot another gang member, another boy. All she saw was a kid, because I was 18 at that time. All she saw was a kid who could write well, apparently, allegedly. Because I still question it, even though I got a best-selling book. So because of that woman, I began to change the trajectory of my life. Because I wanted to not only prove to her that I could do well, I wanted to show her. I'd be like, look, teacher, I could write you more stories. Because what she started doing was, she started giving me homework assignments and reading assignments outside of the curriculum. Because I didn't know how to be a student. I didn't know how to read textbooks. And she was aware of this. And she knew that I couldn't write essays the way the other kids could write essays, the other kids who had gone to high school and graduated from high school. But I could write stories, because that's what you do in the hood. You drink, you kick it in the corner, and you tell stories to one another. And when you're in juvenile hall, that's what you do too. You shoot the shit and you tell stories to one another. So I could do that. And so her homework assignments became this: write me another story about anything in your life. Write me another story. Write me another story. And so that's what I would do. And eventually I finished the class, and I think I got a B. And I came to her and I said, why did I get a B? I thought you said I was a genius. And she said, well, it's still that grammar thing. I said, what the hell is this grammar thing you keep talking about? Too many run-on sentences. You gotta learn how to use commas and periods. But passing that college class made me feel really good. And so I took another class with her, and then another class with her. And our relationship just grew. And nothing changed. In every class that I took with her, I would sit with her after class and talk with her. And talk. She would listen. And she would give me advice. She would give me encouragement. And I would go home and tell my mom, Mom, check it out. She's like, what is this, son? This teacher, this white teacher, she likes me. She says I write well. And eventually, because I was doing so well in her class, I started taking other classes. Health, history, math. Math was always a struggle. There's no saving me from that. Sociology, all the subjects. And I wasn't a great student, got B's, C's, never really got an A. I think the first A I ever got in her class was in one of her classes, which was an honors class, and it was on Asian literature. And I remember she told me after I had taken like 3 classes with her, she goes, hey, why don't you take my honors class? And I go, yeah, all right, what does that mean? She goes, well, you know, it's for the kids that do really well. And it's on Asian literature. I was like, well, I could do that. So I took it, and I remember it was nothing but girls. I was the only male in that class, and they were all Asian or white. And I remember one of the little white girls, she got up there to the podium, and she goes, I'm going to read from my piece. And then I looked at the teacher, I go, she got a piece, yo, she's got a good. That's how ignorant I was about school and education and the terminology. And the teacher goes, no, she's talking about her essay. That's what it's called, a piece. I'm like, all right. So when I got up there, I said, all right, everybody, I'm gonna read from my piece. And I took out my folded essay and I unfolded it, like, all right. But I got an A in that class, and I was so happy. And this fueled me to want to continue with my education. And I didn't know it then, but a lot of my issues were becoming resolved because I was learning where a lot of my aggression, my acting out was coming from. And so eventually, at the same time, I was fighting that court case of attempted murder. And I fought it for 2 years, and I had 2 good lawyers, thanks to my mother. And close to the end of that case, well, at the end of the case, my lawyers came to me and they said, hey, the DA wants to offer you a deal. And they came with the deal, and the deal was that I plead guilty to 3 charges. Attempted reckless discharge with a firearm, reckless bodily injury, and being a gang member. And each one of those charges would carry 4 years, and so I would do 12 years in prison. And my lawyers gave it to me, and they said, Obed, this is a good deal. And I looked at my mom, who was sitting across from me, and with tears coming down her eyes, she just nodded her head, telling me, yes, sign it. Because she understood what they understood. No jury, especially a white jury in North Orange County, was going to find me innocent. I shot a rival gang member, and with my past, it was a wrap. So I grabbed a pen and I signed it, and I gave it back to them, and they took it to the DA. The DA took it to the judge, and the judge got up there that day, and he said, young man, I understand you've reached an agreement with the district attorney. And I said, yes, sir. He said, do you understand that you're going to be serving 12 years in prison? I said, yes, sir. And I was 20 by that time. And he goes, okay, come back in 30 days, at which point you'll be taken into custody. I said, yes, sir. And so court was every Friday. Well, always fell on a Friday. So that Monday after that Friday, I remember I was asleep, and my mom nudged me and she goes, Obed, wake up. I said, what is it, Mom? She goes, you gotta go to school. And I looked at her and I said, Mom, why am I going to go to school? I'm going to prison in 30 days. And my mom, being the practical, pragmatic, and just all around smart person that she is, she goes, look, son, just go to class. You're doing well. If you stay home, you're just going to fall into depression. At least school will take your mind off things. I said, you know what? But more than anything, it was just to make my mom happy. I was already going to prison. She wasn't going to see me for a very long time. I said, you know what, Mom? All right. So I grabbed my clothes and I went to class. And I go to class and I continue with my education, going to classes. And the day I go to court, after those 30 days are up, the judge calls the DA and my lawyers to his chambers. And so they all get up and they go to the back, and the courtroom is full with my family, my family members, my mom, my uncles, my aunts, and my siblings, and my teachers, and people from the community who were showing support for me. And they go to the back, and they're there for like 30 minutes. And eventually they come out, and my lawyer, Victor, he says, Obed, you're not going to jail today. And then Bob, he tells me the same thing, but I don't know what's going on. I think that they're just pushing the date further down the line, because that always happens. They say, it's postponed today, come back in 30 days. But the judge gets up there and he says, the first words out of his mouth are, I'm not sending this young man to prison. And in that moment, that made complete sense. I was I'm not going to prison at all. And he said this afterwards. He says, even though I'm going to be criticized for the decision I'm about to make, I'm going to take it upon myself. And instead of sending this young man to prison, I'm going to sentence him to 5 years probation on gang terms. And then he looked at me and he said, that doesn't mean that the 12 years are dismissed. That means that the 12 years are going to be looming over your head. And if you violate any of the terms of probation within these 5 years, you're going to prison with no questions asked. And he looked at me very sternly and he said, do you understand? I said, yes, sir. And then he started explaining why he was making this decision, and he said, two things. But the DA, to her credit, she had stricken one of my strikes, which allowed the judge to use discretion in sentencing me. Had she not stricken that strike, he would have had no choice but to send me to prison for those 12 years. So that was one. The other thing is that the county does a probation report on you. And the county did a probation report on me and said, this young man is a danger to society, he's a gang member, and he's liable to commit more crimes if you don't send him to prison. That's what the county probation report said. My lawyers, being the good lawyers that they are, they're still around, they hired a private probation officer. You can do that. I didn't know you could do that. And so this probation officer wrote another report that gave another side that said, hey, this young man is going to college, he's about to graduate, and he has aspirations of one day becoming an English professor. And he's also an artist. And in the report, they had copies of some of my drawings at the time. And in addition to that, there were a bunch of letters from my teachers, and especially the professor from Cypress College, and family members showing support for me. So the judge took all of that into consideration. And when he was done, he just said, he looked at me and he said, young man, I wish you the best. And we came out of that courthouse that day, and we were on the top of the steps, and everybody was hugging me and congratulating me. And my mom says, son, you know what you're gonna do on Monday? Because it was a Friday. And I go, yeah, Mom, I'm going to school. I said, but can we go get a hamburger? I'm hungry. She said, we get anything you want, son. And within a couple of months, I graduated from Cypress College and I got my AA degree. And 3 years after that, I graduated from Cal State LA with my bachelor's degree in creative writing. And 2 years after that, I graduated with my master's degree in English literature with an emphasis on medieval literature. And shortly after that, I became an English professor, and I've been teaching ever since. And that was in 2008, and now I'm a tenured professor at East Los Angeles College. But had it not been for my mother, first and foremost, and for this professor who recognized in me something other than a crazy young man who was not capable of changing, I don't know where I'd be. Because she really helped me look into myself. Deeply, and look back into those traumas that had affected me as a child, and really see how they were affecting my life as an adult. And they still do. I'm not going to say that they don't, right? But with help of counselors, with therapists, I move forward. Yeah. And so I want to leave you with that if you deal with people with issues that act out, that to you do not seem normal, you know, before we begin to judge them, let's ask them, what is it? What's bothering you? What could have happened to you? You know, as an English professor, depressed and filled with anxiety. And, you know, through our assignments, you know, I have the students sometimes read them out in class. I don't force them to read. If they want to read, they can. But you'd be surprised how much these young people carry and how much they reveal in certain spaces. And I'm happy to say, that I'm able to create a safe space for my students, because the stuff they reveal sometimes, I'm like, wow, how do you feel comfortable revealing this? I have young people, young ladies, and it's heartbreaking, talk about the sexual violence that they've experienced. And these are 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, when these things have happened to them. The young men witnessing violence in their own homes, their fathers being alcoholics, drug addicts. A lot of them having experienced murders in front of them, suffering from PTSD, even though they don't know it. And these are things that they walk around with on a daily basis. And they pass us by, and we never realize that these young people carry these things. On top of that, put work after school, put responsibilities at home, maybe babysitting their siblings. So when my students come into class late, or they don't show up for a week, I don't penalize them. I send them an email, and when they don't respond, and they do show up, I say, hey, what happened? You were absent the whole week. Is there anything I could help you with? I extend the hand before I even think about penalizing them or taking away points or anything like that. And they break down. And they start telling me their stories. Thank you for your time. And I hope there's something in there that you can walk away with. And if you have any questions,
I don't have a question, but just a comment, and thank you for sharing all this. But I'm always impressed with the fact that you wanted to please, and I think that's a lot of children get so much of wanting to please others. And I'm hearing you that you had a strong bond with your mother, and you wanted to please her. And kids need to do that, because in pleasing, then they get all this positive attention, but that was lacking in your family. So, and with the teacher too, you wanted to please her. So I just think it's incredible. So you had a special bond with your mother.
Yeah, I did have a special bond with my mother. And most children do. Unfortunately, when people come to this country as immigrants, it's counterproductive at times, because my mother had to work often. She was absent at home. It's not because she wanted to be absent. It's not because she didn't want to be in my life. It's because she couldn't. She had to work. If I was going to be fed, if there's going to be food on the table, if there's going to be a roof over my head, she had to work. And that meant that when I got home from school, she wasn't going to be there. That meant that when I woke up in the mornings to go to school, she wasn't going to be there. Who wasn't going to be there was my great-grandma, my little old lady. She's the one that would dress me in the mornings, make me frijoles and huevos in the mornings, and send me off to school. But my mom, and I'm not resentful to my mom because of that. Of course not. She had to work. That we didn't talk about certain issues. A lot of that is cultural too. She had a tough life growing up.
Did she ever stand up to your dad?
She did. She divorced his ass when I was 5. Yeah. She did. She did. When I was 5, she said, "I'm not taking any more of this.
Yeah, get out the chocolate."
Yeah. Luckily, he'd gotten deported, and so he couldn't come back to the country. And so she went to Mexico, and she took me with her, and she filed for divorce, and she said, "This is it. I'm not taking any more of your violence." That was it. And now I applaud my mom for having done that.
Yeah, and taking care of you.
Yeah, me and later my brother and my sister.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah, thank you.
I also wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story and your vulnerability. As a mom de un niño, I totally took all the words you said, and I'm really thinking and realizing what a privilege it is to be able to right now be working and have him here, even though he's running around and still like that medicine of like I get to do that, I get to take care of him while working, and also that reminder of like I know that in his paternal lineage there is that abuse and that disrespect towards women, and that responsibility I have of like guiding him better. So to hear like your relationship with your mom and that you did so much just to like honor her and for her to be proud of you gives me so much hope. Like I can only pray that he will grow up and be the same type of man that wants to just, you know, make me happy so that we can all heal in that way. But also that reminder of I was an educator for a long time in the classroom, and that reminder of the influence that educators have on young minds and the youth. And moving forward, I will remember that, working with the youth and knowing that like sometimes we don't have those role models at home, and those people that do show up for you, you know, the kids want to please you too. And just that responsibility we have with the future generations is big with me. So thank you for your words and your cuentos and palabras, and storytelling was beautiful. I honor you.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, and I mean, children always want to please, you know?
Yeah.
And not only children, every person wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. Why do you think Instagram is so popular? Facebook is so popular. Why do you think those little hearts, those likes are so popular, right? Because people want to be seen. They want to be recognized. So yeah, as an adult, well, at 18, I still consider myself a kid. But when this professor recognizes me and tells me that I do something well, I mean, I'm elated. I'm happy, right? Especially when nobody in her position had ever told me that I did something well. Recognition.
Yes, yes.
Our young people want to be recognized.
Can you share the name of your award-winning book so we can read?
Oh, The Death of My Father, the Pope. I think there's like 4 copies of it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And that was mostly my father's and my relationship. But I'm finishing my second book, and that one's about my mother, and it's called In the Hands of My Mother. And hopefully it'll be out next year.
Oh,
Thank you.
what a nice
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Is your dad still alive?
No, he's dead. He died in 2009.
Oh.
I started writing that book on the day he died.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for everything you've done.
Are you going to be around for a while?
Yeah, I'll stick around for a few minutes,
Okay.
look at some books, print some.
Oh, because I want you to sign it.
Oh, yeah. Right there in the front.
See, you fall your butt. Get up. Hi, everyone. We're going to have our panelists come up in a second, and Daryl in just about 1 minute, okay?
Daryl should be joining with you guys soon. Just remind, if you guys have the survey completed, please leave it in the registration table. And also, don't go in between the Daryl's thing, because lunch is coming. You don't want to miss that. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So Daryl will be here soon. Thank you.
from me later on. I wanted to like make sure I had it.
All right, so thank you so much to everyone who's here today, a part of this event. And thank you so much to the presenters that have gone so far. Wonderful stories that we've been able to listen to and to learn from some of the work that's been conducted by other individuals in our community. So I wanted to give a moment to introduce our wonderful panelists, our promotoras, that are out in the community providing services and engaging the community, the Latino, Latina, Latinx community, and building those bridges into mental health services and other behavioral health types of services. So if you guys wanted to go down and quickly introduce your name and the organization of which you are affiliated, and then we'll go ahead and get into a few questions, questions that we have. And also invite you all, if you have any questions while we are sharing while they're sharing some of their experiences with the work that they do out in the community. If you have any questions that you would like to ask them, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll go ahead and call on you so that you can ask them any questions that you may have. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, my name is Flor Carpio. I work for Providence, the Community Health Department. I've been with this department for about 3 years now. And we have a number of programs that we do, but specifically the one I do is I'm a mental health first aid instructor. So I help partnering organizations and community members be able to be trained in mental health first aid.
Hi, my name is Rosana Morfin. I'm from Visión y Compromiso, this organization too, from non-profit. They prepare people like us they give us certified to us to go out to talk to the people about the mental health or other programs.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Jacqueline Zacarias. I work in Tarzana Treatment Center. I am in the Department of Mental Health. I am health educator / promotora. And I have 1 year working in this wonderful organization. And yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for giving that introduction to yourselves. Just a quick preface, a lot of the questions that I'm going to be asking them both in English and in Spanish, and our promotoras are going to be responding in the language in which they most feel comfortable, because oftentimes when we are out in the community, our promotoras are out in the community, most of the services are provided in the native language in Spanish, oftentimes, so we're giving that opportunity to them to be able to provide their responses in the language in which they are serving our communities. So I'll be giving a quick little summary of their responses in the event that anybody may not speak Spanish in the room with us today. So before I get into the questions, I also just quickly wanted to give a brief introduction as to what a promotora is and what their function is within our community. Promotoras are essentially the individuals who build a bridge between the diverse populations in our communities and build that bridge into the healthcare system. You know, oftentimes the promotora model is used a lot here within the United States to help engage those Latin American individuals coming from Latin American countries or Hispanic communities, and it's used a lot in our work and nowadays. It's something that's been around for many years, but has now just gotten a word, an actual term given to it. According to the CDC, promotoras de salud are also known as promotoras, is a Spanish term for community health workers. The Hispanic community recognizes promotores de salud as lay health workers who work in Spanish-speaking communities. So that's just a brief definition of what our promotoras are and some of the work that they're doing out in the community. So now we're going to hear a little bit about their experiences and some of the work that they've been doing. So first question being, what are some of the barriers that the Latinx community faces when trying to enter or engage in mental health services?
I can go. I definitely think.
Can you give them the microphone, please, while they're talking?
Yeah, I have one.
Oh, that one.
I just don't.
I think
Oh,
it
do I?
Oops.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Do I need a mic?
Yeah, let's see hi.
Yeah. Okay. So we are talking about barriers. I think definitely we do have a couple of barriers when it comes to the Latino community, and I think that it's come from, I mean, generations before. We touched on a couple of the topics today with some of our speakers. It's always been hard to kind of go up to your parents or go up to your family and be like, hey, you know what, I'm kind of a lot sadder than usual. And for the most part, they'll be like, you know, ponte las pilas, you know, get up, get ready, go to work, go to school, because that's what you have to do. And I think that the biggest barrier that we really have is just being able to communicate, being able to be comfortable with sharing the challenges that we have, and just being able to have that conversation.
Otra situación que es considerada una gran barrera para podernos comunicar o poder llegar a la comunidad es el estigma que tenemos sobre el apoyo emocional. Muchos de nosotros venimos de culturas diferentes, de Centroamérica, de Latinoamérica. Ahí la palabra salud emocional no existe en realidad, porque ver a un niño activo para nosotros es normal. Ver un niño aquí, a un niño latino, verlo feliz aquí en la cultura americana, se considera como un niño enfermo, como un niño hyper y como que un niño que necesita atención. Entonces, el estigma, la mala información o la desinformación son unas grandes barreras a la que nos hemos enfrentado los promotores para podernos acercar a la comunidad. Por eso es el principal objetivo que, aparte de que conocemos la cultura, realmente transmitirla como es. ¿Alguna pregunta?
So the stigma thing.
Pienso también que una de las barreras que tenemos con nuestra comunidad es la comunicación, es el idioma. El idioma, y lo vemos y estamos hablando hoy en español, ¿verdad? Porque la mayoría que está afuera habla español. Entonces, cuando llegamos a ellos, nos dicen, oh, pueden necesitar ayuda, los introducimos a los lugares apropiados, pero no encuentran un doctor que hable español o un terapista que hable español, y si hay, van a tomar mucho tiempo, como 6 meses, 7 meses, mientras que esa persona necesita de urgencia una ayuda, una terapia.
Yes, so stigma definitely is one of, oops, yes, I forgot, my bad. So yeah, I have 2 microphones. So yes, the stigma definitely is, as they had mentioned, definitely a huge barrier, including the language barriers that many of our parents, our cousins, our siblings are experiencing when they go and try to engage any treatment of any kind, whether that be trying to find a primary care provider or especially in engaging in mental health services when you are expected to share about yourself and you may not have the words to be able to do that. So thank you for that. The next question would be, what do you think about the importance of the following factors that play a role in creating culturally competent mental health care? The factors being healthcare in one's native language, professional interpreters, peer support, community involvement, and religious faith.
So I definitely think that these are factors that definitely play a significant role. Specifically in our department, just to give an example, we have community health workers that actually work in our hospitals. So we have at Providence, Holy Cross, Tarzana, and St. Joe's, we have community health workers that help with problems in like access to care. We have a mental health navigator that helps create outpatient appointments if they don't qualify for inpatient. We have homeless navigators that give homeless services. And then a lot of our navigators are bilingual. So they're able to come in and they're able to meet you at whatever language you have. And if we don't have that, then there's been so much more push on interpreters, and we can definitely see that just in organizations across the board. There's such more of a push for bilingual people. There's more of a push for people who can actually speak to others in that language and have a general understanding of what healthcare is and where we're trying to go, instead of just kind of like
explaining it to this person, then it's going to keep getting translated from there.
Otra de las cosas que vemos aquí es la religión. Y muchas veces no queremos hablar de eso porque nos vamos a meter en problemas, ¿verdad? Con la gente y todo. Tuve la oportunidad de participar en otros eventos del COVID acerca de las vacunas, y la gente decía, no, Dios me va a sanar, Dios me va a curar. Igual, cuando hablamos de salud mental, dicen, no, no estoy loca, Dios me ayuda, o Dios puedo. Y sí, muchas veces pues tenemos que ser sensibles, ¿verdad?, a lo que la gente siente, y con respeto a ellos también. Pero también tenemos que decirles que Dios también hay que darle una ayudadita, hay que ver al doctor.
Escuchamos que a veces hablar español o entender la cultura es tener una asimilación cultural, porque no es lo mismo decir buenos días arbitrariamente que realmente situar la situación en un contexto. Por ejemplo, en nuestra cultura mexicana se usa mucho la palabra mamacita, pero cuando nosotros la usamos es en una forma respetuosa y en ciertas circunstancias. Aquí a veces las personas, queriendo tener esa conexión, usan la palabra y es una ofensa porque no la están usando correctamente. Entonces eso nos hace ya no confiar en las personas, ya nos hace creer que lo que estamos recibiendo no es real o no es realmente funcional para nosotros. Es como factor importante para poder tener esa conexión con la comunidad, para que la comunidad nos puedan escuchar y nos puedan aceptar, tenemos que demostrar una asimilación cultural.
Muchas gracias por su respuesta. I see how I think they were explaining that it's extremely important to incorporate those religious values into the treatment that the individuals are receiving, and being mindful more than anything, and asking questions if we aren't aware of what someone's background is, to be able to fully understand them and create that safe space. And as I had also mentioned, the importance of having services that are in the language of the person who is trying to engage into the service, to be able to give them that safe space. So thank you so much for your responses. All right. Has it become more difficult post-COVID pandemic to engage the Latinx community?
So I definitely think, just in terms of the pandemic, it really just brought a lot of issues that we had already seen to light. That's what I felt like it did. I didn't really feel like there was a lot more issues that came about. It was just more like, we know that there have been so many kind of downfalls in our healthcare system. We know that there are so many barriers, like we've been talking about all day, for people to even try to get services. We did a number of COVID clinics throughout the community, and I mean, we were even trying to get Uber to give people rides over. And we were trying to make sure, like, okay, well, the bus is on that corner, so if we set up right here and we put that sign right there, they'll know exactly where to come for these vaccines. And even when they got there, it was like, we had to explain the paperwork they needed. If they didn't have an ID, we were like, well, we'll take anything with your name on it. So I think that it just brought to light a lot of the issues that our healthcare system has, and hopefully now that we're able to see them and they're out in the open, we're able to invest more in events like this. I mean, just being able to talk to community members and just being able to let all of you know that we're here and we're here to help, and we're here to try to put at least a Band-Aid over some of those bridges that we're trying to close.
Definitivamente el COVID, la situación pandémica del COVID trajo interesantes condiciones a nuestras comunidades, porque el hecho de tener que vivir, que estar aislado, y que tuviéramos que vernos forzados a convivir con nuestras familias, Literalmente, yo conocí varias familias que definitivamente cuando se dio la especie de toque de queda, que 40 días no se reencontraran, se estrecharan sus relaciones familiares. Tristemente podemos ver que la violencia intrafamiliar se incrementó, la disociación familiar existió más, pero este fue una parte de alguna forma positiva, porque esto ayudó a la gente a realizar, a darse cuenta que necesitaban el apoyo emocional. Tal vez no para sobrellevar una locura, pero sí para aprender a cómo manejar un estrés, aprender a cómo manejar una depresión, aprender a cómo disminuir una ansiedad. Definitivamente el tiempo de COVID fue muy importante en cuanto a que las situaciones emocionales se reconocieran, se aceptaran y que la gente estuviera un poquito más abierta a pedir la ayuda. Desafortunadamente sigue habiendo poca información o las personas no reciben los recursos necesarios. Entonces, esta es la otra parte que falta de apoyo para que la gente se conecte con nosotros, que somos las organizaciones.
Thank you so much. So, as I had mentioned, so there definitely has been some difficulties post-COVID in engaging the Latinx community. Kind of how was mentioned that it brought to light a lot of the issues that arise in the healthcare system, especially when it comes to engaging and serving the underserved communities. And as they had also mentioned, the individuals staying home and what comes with that, the being home with your family. If you are in an abusive type of a relationship, that would only has the potential to only increase that. And outside of that, there is limited transportation, as they were mentioning, again, receiving therapy services in the home when the abuser is there isn't ideal, because of course you wouldn't be able to share that information over the phone because of the fear of being heard. So awesome, thank you so much for sharing some of your experience with that. So the next question being, so throughout the work that you've done in the community, has there been any instances that have made an impact on you and the way that you engage and work with the Latinx population?
So I definitely think that just events like this, and then also just having our events in general, when community members come who really just don't have either all of the information or all the correct information, just being able to sit down with community members, speak in their language, and just be like, this is everything that we have. You can go ahead and ask me any questions, and then if I can't get you the answer, I'll definitely get someone to get you the answer. And I think that just being able to come down like from the hospitals, not come in a coat, not show up with like a badge, and not show up all official, you know, just a community member. I grew up all over the San Fernando Valley. I know this place like the back of my hand. So when people would come over to the clinics and they would be asking me, oh, well, like I can't do my appointment today, you know, is there any other places? I'm like, yeah, around the corner, right by the Pollo Loco. They're doing them right there, and they've been doing them for a while. So I think that just having that community aspect and having people like the promotoras that are here with me who know the community, know where we work, and know the communities we serve, it definitely can create like lasting impact.
Sí, una de las experiencias que yo tuve que sentí que era muy fuerte es que siempre que salimos a la comunidad dejamos flyers por todos lados, ¿verdad? En escuelas, parques o en cualquier evento que estamos. Alguien me llamó y me dijo que estaba teniendo problemas de ansiedad y depresión. Entonces empecé a hablar con la señora y me dijo que acababa de tener su bebé y que el esposo la quería dejar y que ella tenía más niños y tenía miedo de hacer algo a los niños y a ella. Y yo estaba así como, ¿qué voy a hacer? ¿Llamo al 911 o lo que hice fue ir a su casa? Fui a su casa, hablé con ella, llamamos a la clínica que la estaba atendiendo la recibieron porque pues acababa de tener a su baby y yo tenía miedo de la verdad porque pues, esos son los momentos en que pues, las hormonas, todo lo que está pasando con las personas y eso es algo que a veces tal vez no tuve que haberlo hecho, no sé, yo en mi conciencia estoy bien que lo hice, quizás profesionalmente no tuve que haberlo hecho, pero hasta ese punto llegamos las promotoras. Nos envolvemos realmente en los casos y lo que hacemos es llegar a ayudar. A veces nos saltamos ciertos protocolos, ciertas cosas que hay que hacer, pero lo tuve que hacer. Y eso me impactó y es una de las experiencias que yo tengo para compartir cuando voy a los grupos también. Gracias.
Participando con la comunidad, he tenido muchísimas experiencias, tanto en mi país como aquí. Me siento orgullosa de decir que yo vengo de una familia matriarcal, si consideramos que en México predomina el patriarcalismo, que quiere decir que los padres son los hombres, no los padres, los hombres son los que mandan. Entonces, mi familia era matriarcal, 100%. Mi abuela mi bisabuela era de una comunidad y ella era una healer. Eso nos daba como mujeres una posición un poquito mejor que la de las demás familias y que los demás grupos. Me encantó la iniciación de este programa porque estuvo muy conectado con mis raíces. Y bueno, mi bisabuela siendo healer, ella trataba y se comunicaba con diferentes personas sin importar su color, su idioma, porque incluso en su época no se hablaba realmente el español, hablaban diferentes dialectos. Y ella tenía esa capacidad de hablar en diferentes dialectos, aparte del español. Desafortunadamente ya no heredé esa parte, pero siempre ella era muy compasiva y siempre encontraba la forma correcta de poder ayudar a las personas, no importaba la condición que ellos presentaran. Y muchas veces nosotros que estábamos dentro de la familia considerábamos como que injusto el trato porque veíamos como que, oh, con este niño tú eres amable, con esta persona tú eres muy buena gente y porque con nosotros eres estricta, porque a nosotros nos regañas. Y nos decía, porque ustedes me tienen a mí y ellos no me tienen. Y como que en ese momento no entendí muy bien la idea, pero sobre los años, de alguna forma me gustó estar involucrada en la comunidad. Y tuve no la fortuna, pero sí la situación tratando de seguir sus pasos, estudié el bien en México. Y en 2 ocasiones, 2 personas que se intentaron suicidar llegaron en ese estado de crisis, de que una persona había tomado veneno para ratas y yo estaba sola en la clínica y así como que, oh my gosh, ¿qué voy a hacer? Te me vas a morir. Y bueno, hice lo que tenía que hacer en ese momento médicamente, pero después, cuando ya la persona se recuperó, que gracias a Dios lo supe hacer bien, llegó el doctor y dijo, oh, perfecto, él ya está bien, nada más hay que dejarlo descansar. Pero días después, esta persona me encontró en la calle y me abrazó y me dio las gracias, pero no fue hasta ahí, sino que traté de alguna forma él sintió confianza conmigo y me empezó a platicar y obviamente la situación que lo llevó a ese extremo fue que estaba deprimido, que sufría muchos problemas emocionales. Y le digo, bueno, también hay solución para eso. Obviamente yo no estaba muy familiarizada con esa situación, de situaciones emocionales, pero recordé a mi bisabuela. Y dije, ¿qué haría ella en este caso? Dije, bueno, yo no tengo el conocimiento, yo no te puedo ayudar, pero recurrí con el doctor, que era en ese tiempo nuestro instructor, y le digo, hey, esta persona tiene esto, tú lo tienes que ayudar. Yo no sé cómo, pero tú lo tienes que ayudar. Y me dice, bueno, no, yo no soy psicólogo, yo soy médico, pero tráelo y vamos a ver cómo lo ayudamos. Pasando el tiempo, encontré a esta persona y logró sobrellevar su crisis, formó una familia, era feliz y me daba las gracias. Y así pasó con otro caso, que también esta persona se quiso suicidar, y a estas personas los que les llevó el intento de suicidio fue su situación emocional, que estaban desestabilizados emocionalmente. Pero bueno, como les digo, teniendo ese conocimiento adquirido por mi bisabuela, tuve las herramientas como para poderlos guiar. Eso en México. Aquí, ya viviendo aquí como estudiante en un colegio comunitario, también me gustó involucrarme con los estudiantes, les ayudaba en clases, era tutor. Y encontré a dos personas, bueno, tuve contacto con muchos estudiantes, pero dos estudiantes en particular en diferentes periodos estaban decididos a dejar la escuela y me decían que porque era difícil, porque se sentían deprimidos, porque se les hacía difícil, y yo les decía, no, nada de give up, tú tienes que seguir, tú puedes, tú eres muy inteligente. Y lo mismo, tuve buen contacto con algunos profesores y yo acudía con esos profesores y les decía, mira, tengo este amiguito, este compañerito, así, y él necesita ayuda y tú lo tienes que ayudar. Bueno, yo decía a ellos, tú lo tienes que ayudar porque ellas, como figuras representativas de la institución, yo sentía como que tenían más poder o más conocimiento, más herramientas para poderlos ayudar. Y así fue, me dice, ok, voy a ver qué puedo hacer, tráelos. Yo se los llevaba. Tiempo después, esto les estoy diciendo cuando pasó en un colegio comunitario, tiempo después me los encontré en Season y me dijeron, si tú no hubieras hecho eso por mí, yo no hubiera logrado llegar hasta aquí. Entonces, ver esos cambios, ver que podemos hacer el cambio en la vida de alguien es muy reconfortante y vale la pena. A mí, este trabajo es de mucha dedicación, de mucha constancia, pero definitivamente remunera emocionalmente. Y, por ejemplo, ayer precisamente una amiguita, una compañerita, me llama y me dice, oye, estoy muy triste, me siento muy deprimida, yo quiero ya renunciar a esto. Organicé una feria donde iba a proporcionar información, servicios a la comunidad, y solo llegaron 3 personas. Dice, y me siento muy desanimada. Le digo, no te preocupes, no eres tú la que está, porque ella se echaba la culpa a ella, como que ella había hecho algo mal. Y le digo, es que no eres tú. Con que haya asistido una persona, créeme que vas a hacer el cambio en la vida de esa persona y esa persona te va a referir a más personas. Tal vez no lograste juntar 20 personas o 50 o 100, pero con una sola que hayas conectado, haces la diferencia en la comunidad. Definitivamente hay muchas buenas resultados trabajar con la comunidad. Gracias.
Qué impactante el trabajo que hacen ustedes en la comunidad. It's really the work that they're doing in the community is extremely impactful, and just to see how in the ways that they have gained their experience, and now with their own lived experience are able to go ahead and help those who are in need, especially those within our own communities. So thank you so much for sharing your guys' experiences and how you became promotoras de salud and are now in our communities, engaging those who have those barriers to mental health services. So once again, thank you so much for sharing. Any questions from the audience on, and maybe possibly the work that they do out in the community? Yes, I believe you had a question.
Muchas gracias por compartir sus testimonios, sin duda un gran trabajo de la promotora, y la conexión que tienen con la comunidad es muy grande emocionalmente, y a mí me gustaría saber qué hacen ellas para cuidar su propia salud mental.
¿Qué hacen ustedes para cuidar su salud mental? Es una pregunta muy importante.
Mi salud mental, siempre me la estoy cuidando. En todos los currículos que hago, soy instructora de los primeros auxilios de la salud mental. So, tenemos un segmento en el currículo, es el último, y se llama Self-Care. Y cada vez que doy esa clase, yo siempre le digo a la gente que la única cosa que tienen que hacer para mí ese día después del entrenamiento es que por lo menos 5 minutos se van a sentar solos en un cuarto, solo con ustedes, solo así. Solo poder estar en el momento, ver lo que está pasando y después si me puedes dar más de 5 minutos, mejor. Pero si ya está el niño tocando en la puerta, entonces 5 está bien. So, siempre solo poder sentarme y solo poder ver todo lo que está pasando todo el día, como más la paz es lo que me ayuda a la salud mental. Nosotros trabajamos en lugares donde hay gente hablando, gente caminando, hay que manejar de un lugar a otro lugar. Entonces definitivamente un lugar callado me ayuda a la salud mental.
Sí, para mí es como soltar. Para mí es soltar, uno se involucra mucho, como se dice, emocionalmente, tomas el caso tuyo, pero en el momento que ya se va la gente o que dejamos de hacer lo que estamos haciendo y uno mismo sabe que por salud mental tenemos que soltar ese caso, no tomar lo propio, ¿verdad? Tomarlo en los momentos que hay que tomarlo, pero también tenemos nuestra propia vida y tenemos que llegar, como dicen, de la puerta para afuera se queda el trabajo y de la puerta para adentro está la casa. Y eso nos hace la diferencia de tratar, ¿verdad? De tratar de mantenernos bien con nuestra salud mental.
Particularmente, bueno, parte de mi trabajo es dar talleres sobre apoyo emocional, hablar de estrés, ansiedad, depresión. Y parte de esa plática también es como que hablar un poquito sobre cómo las personas podemos sobrellevar estas situaciones nosotros mismos. Y yo siempre le digo a la gente con la que platico que todos somos individuales, por lo tanto todos tenemos diferentes medios de proveernos confort a nosotros mismos, independientemente de lo que los psicólogos, los terapeutas familiares nos recomiendan. Porque no nos podemos esquematizar en que, vete a hacer ejercicio 30 minutos, vete a comer saludable. Sí, obviamente es parte de una vida sana, pero no todos podemos realmente encajar en ese grupo de recomendaciones. Y lo que yo les digo a las personas, hagan lo que a ustedes les gusta. Particularmente, cómo me curo yo emocionalmente, porque sí es muy fuerte. A veces uno no puede, cuando uno se conecta con la gente y empieza a escuchar, somos como que los segundos psicólogos, algo así, porque nos tomamos muy en serio el papel de que debemos de ayudar. Entonces, como que el malestar de la persona se nos queda y está en nuestra cabecita dando vueltas y cómo le podría ser, y esta señora así, o este señor así, o este niño así. Entonces, particularmente lo que yo hago es, ok, vamos a respirar tantito, vamos a darle un break a ese pensamiento. Y a mí me encanta, no la jardinería, pero me encanta cultivar orquídeas. Entonces, incluso bien chistoso porque me gustan las orquídeas y yo pensaba como que era fácil, como que cualquier otra flor. Entonces, yo empecé a colectar, pero obviamente se me empezaba a morir. Entonces decía, pues ya se murió, ya no. Ya, a tirarla y a comprar otra. Pero dije, no, tiene que, si las venden es porque hay un way de que ellas sobrevivan. Y voy a aprender. Y sí, ahora sí que me tomé mi autocurso de orquídeas, ya me considero experta. Al menos tengo una que ya me ha durado 5 años. Y al principio me regalaban el 10 de mayo orquídeas. Y bien chistoso porque me dice una amiga que le decía a su niño que me comprara una orquídea. ella estaba tratando como que de buscar que la más bonita, que la más grande. Y el niño le dice, oh, no te preocupes, abuela, además ella las mata. Y dije, oh my gosh. Entonces dije, no. Ok, ya acabé la experimentación, voy a aprender. Y es lo que hago. Yo en mi caso particular, no, como les digo, no hago jardinería en general, pero sí cultivo orquídeas y que planto una semillita aquí, que planto otra semillita acá. Y ya, de esa forma trato de liberar la energía.
Muchas gracias por compartir los modos de que ustedes practican el autocuidado y las maneras de que...
Ya nos vamos.
Ya todos váyanse. Muchísimas gracias. No, that's a very important question on how we, as promotoras, us as professionals in healthcare, practice self-care when we are engaging with the community and are hearing stories that are, again, very impactful and oftentimes do resonate with us and, oftentimes have the potential to trigger us. So finding ways of practicing self-care and practicing grounding techniques in those situations, as I had mentioned, really great ways. Thank you for that. Any other questions that you may have for our promotoras? Yes.
Sí, bueno, primero, chicas, muchas gracias por compartir con nosotros y por el trabajo que hacen en la comunidad. Mi pregunta especialmente, saben que con los programas que tenemos en la comunidad, especialmente las mujeres, ¿verdad? Comparten, como dicen, háganlas por los codos o no hablan. En programas tan rígidos como Mental Health, ¿verdad? Que hemos accedido desde el comunidad, ¿cómo tratan con eso? Porque especialmente en el nuevo currículum hay muchas actividades y todo y los tiempos. ¿Cómo tratan, verdad? Cuando las mujeres quieren compartir y pues ya se va a terminar, tenemos que ir a cierta actividad. ¿Cómo tratan con eso?
Específicamente en el currículo que yo hago, los primeros auxilios, cuando yo estoy con las participantes, nosotros siempre pasamos un slide que se llama un Learning Agreement, básicamente. Entonces, en esa parte siempre nos enfocamos en las diferentes cosas que podemos hacer para asegurarnos que el espacio donde estamos aprendiendo, que todos se sientan comfortable, que todos estén safe. Entonces, hablamos de diferentes cosas como que cuando vamos a estar compartiendo, si alguien comparte algo bien sensitivo o algo bien traumático, it's confidential, siempre, y hay privacidad. Entonces, si comparten, vamos a compartir, pero también siempre tengo que avisarles que este currículo no es un grupo de terapia y tampoco no es grupo de soporte. Entonces, yo siempre estoy diciendo que las herramientas que nosotros le estamos dando son herramientas similares a los primeros auxilios para la salud física. Entonces, en la misma manera que vas a hacer los primeros auxilios cuando vas a dar CPR o alguien se quiebra el brazo y tienes que solo estar allí para mantenerlo hasta que vengan los profesionales, es lo mismo que estamos haciendo nosotros. So, tú no vas a ir a hablar con esa persona y empezar a preguntarles, okay, what are your triggers? Like, ¿por qué tienes ansiedad hoy? ¿Por qué estás teniendo un ataque de pánico? Nosotros no tenemos esas herramientas y también ya hay gente que les pagan hacer eso, entonces ¿por qué tenemos que agarrar la responsabilidad nosotros, verdad? So, siempre solo ser transparente, avisarles qué vamos a repasar, qué van a aprender y qué pueden compartir ya cuando nos vayamos.
Ya nos van a pagar la luz.
Esta pregunta es muy interesante y en el caso particular que yo doy pláticas sobre temas emocionales y como les dije hace un momento, específicamente depresión, ansiedad, estrés, 100% problema emocional. Sí, igual seguimos un lineamiento al principio de la plática, establecemos qué información es la que se va a proveer, también se les aclara a los participantes, en mi caso que no soy psicóloga, que no soy terapeuta, que les voy a proporcionar la información, se les van a dar tips para poder sobrellevar la situación pero también se les da la recomendación de que si consideran, a través de la plática, consideran que realmente necesitan el apoyo, me pueden contactar después para poderlas guiar en el proceso de referirla a los recursos, ya sea con nosotros mismos o con cualquier otra organización. Y igual, se les, pues básicamente es eso, de que se les informa, se les da la información, pero se les informa que no van a recibir una terapia. Ahora, de cómo tratar el tema, porque es verdad, no voy a llegar y les voy a decir, tú estás deprimido, tú estás estresado, tú sufres ansiedad. No, pero se habla en general, se hablan se dan definiciones generales e incluso, por ejemplo, parte de nuestra presentación es proveerles un pequeño cuestionario. Obviamente este cuestionario está tomado de las asociaciones mentales o de instituciones reconocidas, instituciones reales, y se les dice, este cuestionario es para ti, contéstalo en tu privacidad, es una guía que de acuerdo a las respuestas te va a ayudar a identificar si estás atravesando por una crisis o no. Porque muchas veces, aunque lo estamos viviendo, nos negamos. Es parte de las barreras, es parte de nuestra cultura de que no, yo no estoy loca, no, yo no necesito esta ayuda, aun cuando estamos a gritos pidiendo esa ayuda.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, sure.
Nosotros también ofrecemos la clase, el taller de primeros auxilios, y algo que pasó este fin de semana, de hecho, es que como cuando lo hacemos en español, no sé si es por generación o porque me sueno más joven, que se me hace muy difícil de interrumpir a las compañeras que están ahí para tomar el taller y diciendo sus historias. Muchos de ellos creo que se encuentran en tal vez la primera oportunidad de desahogo. No sé si eso es algo que ustedes han visto, pero yo hasta les tuve que decir, ¿sabe? Me educaron a ser educada y no puedo interrumpir. Ayúdenme, compañeros, en lo que no compartan, porque tenemos mucho currícula que repasar, ¿verdad? No sé si quieren hablar un poco de eso, de cómo navegan esos tipos de situaciones, así para que nosotros también que estamos allá en Los Ángeles dando estos cursos, tal vez podamos desarrollar nuestra capacidad también.
La primera cosa que yo siempre hago es que cada vez que vamos a compartir experiencias, si yo voy a hacer una pregunta de a alguna persona que ha sufrido de un insto de pánico, o a panic attack, hay una pregunta que tenemos que hacer esa pregunta. Y antes que hago esa pregunta siempre digo, solo para asegurarnos que estamos en tiempo, para asegurarnos que no pasemos, para asegurarnos que todos salgamos aquí con tiempo de lonche y con tiempo para regresar a la casa, vamos a tenerlo a 2 historias. 2 personas pueden compartir. Y después, si quieren seguir compartiendo, yo y mi compañera aquí estamos después de la clase. Si tienen algo que quieren compartir, if you need a follow-up, nuestra información siempre la damos. Siempre tenemos que abrir el espacio para compartir, pero no abrirlo tanto que todos van a brincar. And be like, okay, now we're going to have a whole conversation about, and basically make it a support group. Definitivamente solo poniendo las reglas, poniendo the agreement, ayuda mucho, solo para poner esas barreras diciendo 2 preguntas para esto, 2 respuestas para esto y después y siguiendo.
Sí, de la misma manera creo que trabajamos todas porque tenemos que tener reglas, porque si no se alarga como el día de hoy. ¿Verdad? Ya así como ya el bebé ya nos apagó la luz 2 veces. Bueno, no queremos que eso nos pase en nuestras charlas. Pero sí, definitivamente ponemos los límites desde que entramos. Y si es algo muy confidencial, también les decimos, si usted tiene algo que decir, que sea muy confidencial, se le pide a los demás que sean sensibles, que tengan, porque por favor sean, que tengan esa privacidad para no compartir afuera, ¿verdad? Y que si la persona se siente cómoda diciendo lo que va a decir, que es mejor que se limite un poquito, y que para eso estamos nosotros. Les dejamos, como dijo ella, a nuestra compañera, los flyers, ahí está nuestro nombre, nuestro teléfono, nuestro correo electrónico, para que no pase eso.
Definitivamente, dependiendo del tema que se va a tratar, es como uno establece la participación de las personas. Porque, por ejemplo, no voy a hablar de ansiedad y decirle a una persona, bueno, sí, ya no más, porque tengo que seguir. En este caso, en este tipo de talleres que yo doy, los adapto a cierto tiempo. Por ejemplo, estamos hablando de 60 minutos. Esos 60 minutos los divido en secciones, y entre cada sección doy un periodo de unos 3 minutos para darle la oportunidad a la gente que participe, que se exprese, porque esa es la idea. No podemos hablar de salud emocional y reprimir a las personas, ¿verdad? Es como que no estamos siendo congruentes. Definitivamente creo que dependiendo del tipo de información que se provee, es como uno puede establecer su tiempo de participación de las personas que están colaborando.
So much. Lunch is here. Yes. Awesome. So thank you all so much for all of your questions and comments. And muchas gracias a nuestras expertas, a las promotoras de la comunidad que están en nuestras comunidades todos los días ayudando a la comunidad latina.
Gracias a todos.
Passing it off to Ms. Gloria Cisneros.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. What an amazing lineup we had today. Thank you. From our starting opening remarks with our very own Dr. Jose Salazar, to listening to Dr. Patty and Belen talk about healing our seeds by returning to our roots, to listening to Obed talk about his journey and how mental health can affect us at such an early age. Just so important, because it's out there, and oftentimes we forget, right? We look at these kids and we're like, gosh, well, even us, professionals that we do this, we forget. So those kind of stories are so important that we keep alive. To close it with our promotoras, which is something that's very dear to me, because I've seen these ladies do amazing work in the community and be able to connect with people that would never dream of coming to get services. And you see these wonderful professionals go out and get people to come in and get taken care of with their mental health and other behavioral health issues that they might have. So thank you.